an experiment for my YouTube channel, which of course is called Forever Blue, but I also host weekly a podcast called Forever Blue, which is sponsored by HotClick Marketing, and I thank them for doing that. And I also wanted to mention at this stage, before we record the podcast, that if you want to vote for me, at Ian Cheeseman, for the FBA's hashtag Best Vlogger, Best Podcast, go to that website and you can vote, or on Twitter, just put at the FBA's. I'm voting for Ian Cheeseman in there and what you voted me for. So thank you. Right, I'm going to record the podcast now with my lineup, which I'll introduce in just a second. You won't see the whole of the podcast on here. You'll have to download it to listen to it all. But we'll start recording the podcast now. See? All this technical stuff. Here we go. Welcome along to the very latest Forever Blue podcast. I'm Ian Cheeseman. Thanks very much for joining us. Thanks very much to HotClick Marketing, who sponsor the podcast, which I really appreciate. They do lots of stuff with Google ads and prioritising. I was talking to the boss, Tony, the other day. It's fascinating. Go on the website and have a look at it. It's called hotclickmarketing.co.uk. And we're here at the Holiday Inn, which is at Central Park in Manchester, and I have my guests with me. They vary from week to week, quality to quality. I'm not going to rank them. Oh, yeah. So I'm just going to say, introduce yourselves for me.
Hello, I'm Matty Dove, the under-25 City Matters rep. Just like Raheem Sterling, I've scored my hat-trick this week, third time on the podcast, so I'm expecting some sort of prize. I know it's not as prestigious as a Premier League match ball, but yeah, happy to be here again.
Hi, I'm Emily. I've been on the podcast quite a few times
More
now.
More than Matty. You never go at him then.
No. I could just keep coming back, and yeah,
like a bad penny,
like a bad smell. And I've been a City fan since like the late 80s, and I'm still here, obviously. And I hope you enjoy listening.
And if you're a regular to my YouTube channel, then you'll recognise Gary Neville next to me.
No. He's gone there again. I warned him about that.
Made a name for himself on there. But let's introduce yourself properly.
Yeah, so I'm a 25-year-old City fan, Harlan, from Oldham. I've supported City all my life since '93. And this is I think it's my sixth cappy, and last week I was in international duty, and a couple of weeks ago I was also in international duty as well, so I couldn't play league games.
Right, so we're going to talk about a whole load of things, and if you're listening to the podcast, then you will hear later on us talk about Raheem Sterling, Ilkay Gundogan, who's obviously there's been some talk about a new contract, the Watford game, the fan attacks that have happened, even though they're not specifically to do with City, the title race, and maybe just touch a little bit on the Champions League draw. What I want to start off with in this section is VAR. Now, I know it's a general topic. The one instance recently of VAR which was controversial to me was the away game at Schalke when Nicolas Otamendi was adjudged to have handballed and then was sent off as well. Now, personally, I didn't think that was a handball. And also, I mean, I know we're a City podcast, but we saw the incident in Paris and United getting through in the last stages, and some people listening to this might think that the reason I'm mentioning this is because of some sort of anti-United agenda, which it isn't. It's just to talk about the subject generally. And before you give me your views, my personal view is that VAR should be, and was touted as being used for clear and obvious mistakes. What seems to have happened, I didn't watch the World Cup, I was away, and you guys probably did watch the World Cup, and people keep referring back to the World Cup and saying how well it was administered in the World Cup, so I can't comment on that. But what I've seen of VAR, now in the Champions League, in the domestic cups, and occasionally when I watch another league where it's used, is that, first of all, there's a lot of inconsistency in the way it's being used. So I understand why the Premier League haven't introduced it at this stage, but also the fact that it isn't being used for clear and obvious mistakes. They're looking at, is his kneecap, over the line. I didn't think that was how it was supposed to be being used. And to add to that, there seems to be a new version, certainly in Europe, of if the ball hits an arm, even if it's not deliberate, it's still handball. We know they're introducing that actually as a rule next year, that if it hits the arm. And one of my concerns is that, this is a much bigger discussion now, but that everybody's going to be defending like this. And if you even slightly turn you know, that if it just catches your arm, that's going to be a penalty, and we're going to see loads of penalties. So there's a whole lot of stuff here about VAR. How do you feel about it?
To be honest, I'm in favour of VAR, but only if it works right. And on the basis we've seen so far, it's not working right. The problem we've got is that when you watch replays like the Man United handball, he's watching it 6-7 times in slow motion, and it looks so much worse in slow motion. If you think how fast that ball is getting pinged at him, and he's literally got his arm by his side, in real time, it's never a penalty, but he's watching it so slowly, it's almost as if he's done it on purpose. But I don't think it's working well at the minute, and you can't introduce it until it is working properly. I mean, the one in the City game where he couldn't even go to the monitor because the monitor wasn't working, so he couldn't even watch it himself. That's just ridiculous. If this system is going to be introduced, it has to be 100% foolproof, and it's not at the minute.
So what's your opinion? Should it be introduced?
Not at the minute, no. It's frustrating.
Ultimately, you want it though, by the sense of it.
Eventually, I do, because there's sometimes where you see a goal and it's clearly offside. You're like, oh, if they could just have one look at it, they could give it as an offside. That is a frustration. But
that's a clear and obvious mistake.
And 100% in favour. Why would you not want a decision? Because if a decision goes against you like that, of course you want it to be rectified in the moment. But when it's something like you say about handball or something, then it's a lot more of a complicated matter, and they haven't managed to rectify the problem so far. So at the minute, I'd say no.
Yeah, I'm in favour for it, and I agree with Matty with all of that. It has to be consistent. The problem with the Otamendi incident is that you could see that he was moving, and he tried everything he could to avoid it. So, you know, he needed a reaction time, and it's not deliberate, is it? There was nothing deliberate about it whatsoever. But it's frustrating for me when I see players as well doing the sign. And that happens all the time now. You see him badgering the referee and the officials and going up to him and doing like the television sign, begging for the replay. And the officials need to be strong enough to kind of rise above that and not fall into the trap of, like you say, it should be clear and obvious and not just nitpicking and going for every little thing. And if a player comes begging, they've got to be like, well, if they know in the heart of hearts, they've got to be like, no, you know, they've got to be strong. But across the board, you know, it's frustrating when it goes to VAR and you're in the stadium and you're waiting because you don't know what's happening.
It's for TV, isn't it? That's the problem. TV viewers might enjoy VAR more because they are right in on the decision making. We in the stadium are not. And not every stadium has these big screens.
If they can, that's the problem. If the stadiums do have the big screens and they can somehow show us on the big screens what's going on, then that would be brilliant and fair enough, because that would involve the fans a little bit more inside the ground.
But they're frightened to show it in case the crowd reacts to what they perceive as a bad decision.
Well, they should, because you'd react at home, wouldn't you? I reacted definitely with the Otamendi thing. I was screaming at my television. I was going crazy. And the fact of the matter, like Matty said, that the monitor wasn't working for the official, that's just appalling, and it's so inconsistent. You can't implement something and it not be on the money every single time. Everything has to be right and consistent across the board, and if it's not, then there's flaws, isn't there?
I'm a big fan of VAR personally, and this is something that it's a subject that me and my co-presenter on the radio station that I present the show on now spoke about over 2.5 years ago, and we actually wrote some notes out with regards to VAR and what we think could happen if it was employed in football, which it wasn't even spoken about massively at the time that we first said. Could it be used like it is in tennis? Could it be used like it is in rugby? That kind of thing.
But you see, that's interesting that you say that, because in tennis, the decisions are pretty much black and white.
Yeah.
It's all goal line technology, isn't it? Well, whereas in rugby, and I've watched a lot of rugby league down the years, they use it and the game is slowed right down. And those explosive fan moments when a goal goes in are destroyed, because almost every single try, it seems, the referee bottles out, and he himself, it's not necessarily the fans who are, the players of the opposition that are doing it, but he starts drawing this because he bottles out of every decision. And then you have a 5-minute wait. And to me, that spoils it. One of the great things about football is it's a fluid game.
Yeah.
It keeps moving all the time. And you lose the... Is that not something that worries you?
It is. But the thing that we spoke about is that if it was to be employed like... Not like tennis, because like you say, it's very... line judges. It's like a goal line technology version of Hawkeyes, they call it in tennis. We were more talking about the way that it's implemented. So, for example, managers get 5 challenges per game each. And then if they perceive a goal to have been offside, for example, or a ball to have been played when the player was offside, or it's a handball, or it's gone in off an arm, or something like that, the manager has the opportunity to call and say to the referee or to the fourth official, can you have a word with the referee in his ear? Or if he's near the linesman, can you have a word with the referee? We'd like to challenge that specific incident. If it's not, you lose a challenge and it's not given, the goal, for example. If it is, your challenge has been worthwhile and you've got the correct decision. If you run out of challenges because you've used them during the course of the game and you've wasted them because you've been trying to get a goal that maybe you're 70% sure isn't a goal or isn't handball or whatever, then that's your fault.
I
that's your
get
problem.
that plan, but
it might not happen, and it probably would never be able to be implemented in football.
Well, it's an interesting concept, but I still come back to my fundamental thing. You tell me, am I right or wrong? I get the feeling from Matta that you agree with what I'm saying, that it has to be a clear and obvious mistake. Yeah. I have no problem with clear and obvious mistake, but clear and obvious mistake is not the way it seems to be going.
Not exactly.
There was an example of it
sorry to interrupt you, but
it's fine.
if the officials are taking 5 minutes to make a decision because they're looking at it from 15 different angles, then straight away that cannot be a clear and obvious mistake.
But if it's going to cost you a place in, say, the FA Cup final, do you not want the right decision?
If it's a clear and obvious mistake, yes.
But even if it's not clear and obvious?
No, then
really?
I'm happy to go with the officials.
You should know what you're looking for, the way, and I know what you're trying to say. You should know what you're looking for. If you're looking for a specific incident within a move, you should be able. The way the technology is and the way it's been used in Germany, for example, and in the World Cup, you should be able to pinpoint what you're actually looking for and have a decision within 30 seconds.
Yeah, and if that decision can't be given to you quickly,
5 minutes,
then it, by definition, it is not a clear and obvious mistake.
It's as if what you're saying here, it's as if they're spending too much time looking at it because they don't want the correct decision to be. It's like the opposite of what they're actually looking for. So they want to try and find a reason why the goal shouldn't be given.
We're all City fans, right? We all watched the game in Germany. Just as an experiment, did you think Otamendi handled it?
Well, he did handle it, but it wasn't a penalty.
So you wouldn't have given a penalty?
No penalty.
I wouldn't. I think it's exactly the same as the Kimpembe one. It's been fired at him. It's hit his arm. It's in a natural position.
You can see him moving away.
So what we're saying here is, all right, there's people who'll say we're just biased, but 3 people, and I've not even expressed a view, have said that VAR got it wrong.
But he couldn't even see it.
So therefore, it's a debatable point. It's not a clear and obvious mistake.
That could have been
that's
anyone.
why I'm saying
I rest my case.
No, but I'm saying it's inconsistent. I've already said that. Yeah. It's inconsistent and it needs to be
But what makes
consistent.
it inconsistent? The fact that it isn't clear and obvious.
Yeah. The other issue
if it's clear and obvious, every decision's right.
The other issue you've got is, because I was thinking, well, you could just use it on offsides only, and then because offsides are clear and obvious, they've got the line and they can see where. But then you've got how long does the play carry on for? Because you've got the problem where the linesman doesn't want to raise his flag because he wants to see if there's a goal, and if there's not, they can carry on. But then
hang on,
how long
right?
does the play go on?
The first Raheem Sterling goal against Watford, you've watched that?
Yeah,
it was
awesome.
Should that have been counted or not?
No,
not really.
It shouldn't have been counted. So the referees consulted the linesman.
I'm stuck in 2 minds with it because Sterling has gone. He becomes active as soon as he tries to swing his foot at the ball.
This just proves my point.
Yeah.
The fact that you're caught in 2 minds.
You're
the
debating
fact
it.
that then we're all. It's not a clear and obvious mistake.
Well,
the referee made a decision.
In the
conjunction
match,
with his
when they kick the ball at Sterling,
I'll give
he
you an
has to make a check. He has to make a
example. I'll give
clearance.
you an example of VAR. The Arsenal FA Cup semi-final a couple of years ago spoke on another podcast about this when we discussed VAR. Somebody had a goal disallowed, a City player. I can't remember who it was now.
Is it the one that went out? The ball went out?
Oh, yeah. And it should have stood. And potentially we could have got through. If it would have stood, potentially we would have been through to the FA Cup final. It should have stood. We came out and went back to our hotel, and there was 2 FA officials in there who both agreed that it should have been a goal. If they knew and they spoke to us and said that the referee was wrong that day. The officials got it wrong and they will be reprimanded for it. If they knew, stood there, we've got our journey home to make from London, having been told by FA officials that they got it wrong. How demoralising is that they actually know half an hour after they get, maybe not even half an hour, they know that it was wrong.
That's a fair point. We'll come back to
But
VAR again.
It comes down, doesn't it, Ian?
It's come down to it's robbed us of a place in the FA Cup final and potential silverware. It's a massive decision.
It comes down to interpretation of the output at the end of the day. It's how you interpret it. At the end of the day, without VAR, it's the referee or the fourth official or the linesman's interpretation of what's going on in that specific situation. With VAR, that should further enhance what they have got with their own two eyes.
Really, the referee shouldn't have to go.
Then they're reinterpreting
something. Yeah, they're watching it. They should be able to make a decision without going, "Oh, we're not sure. You go and have a look at it."
You got it wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's a clear and obvious mistake. I think I've made my point. Right, okay, let's stop the VAR chat. And in terms of you watching on YouTube, then that's where this video finishes. So thanks very much for watching. If you want to listen to the full video, the full podcast, then go to Soundcloud, go to iTunes, go to any of your favourite platforms, I think Spotify, and you'll find us on there. And subscribe, give us 5 stars and all that so we get up the ratings. And if you want to vote for me, footballbloggingawards.co.uk/vote-now, or vote at Ian Cheeseman at the FBA. So thanks very much. We're going to continue on with the podcast now.